Today, we're going to crack open a book that's not just a book. It's basically a time machine. We're about to meet a man whose secret diary, written over 350 years ago, gives us this incredibly raw and honest window into a world that's completely vanished.
I mean, really think about that for a second. We all know the dates, right? We know the names of kings, and we know about the big battles. But what did it actually feel like to walk down the street back then? What were people's real hopes, their fears, their little everyday annoyances? So often, history can feel like just a list of facts, but that feeling of the past, that's what usually gets lost.
And what a world it was. We're talking 17th century London, one of the most dramatic, chaotic, and just transformative periods you can possibly imagine. It was a city of huge change, like a locked room from history. But what if I told you that someone left us the key? So, who was this person with the key? You might think he was a king, or a general, or some famous philosopher. But nope, he was an ambitious civil servant. A pretty ordinary guy, really, living in some absolutely extraordinary times, who just so happened to write everything down. His name was Samuel Pepys. So let's get to know this guy. Pepys was born into a pretty modest family, but he was incredibly smart and driven. He clawed his way up through the government to become a huge figure in the English Navy, the Secretary of the Admiralty. I mean, this was a serious job, you know? He was involved in managing wars and shaping national policy. But here's the secret sauce. For 9 incredibly eventful years, Pepys kept a private diary. And to make sure it stayed private, he wrote the whole thing in this kind of secret code, a shorthand that nobody even figured out how to read for over 100 years after he died. And that secrecy? Well, that's what allowed him to be brutally and sometimes shockingly honest. And because of that honesty, his diary gives us a front row seat to history that is totally unique. He wasn't just writing about events from far away, he was living them. He was breathing the same air, walking the same streets, and feeling the same gnawing uncertainty as everyone else in London. And wow, what a decade to be keeping a diary. He kicks things off right as the monarchy is brought back with King Charles II. Then he lives through the absolute horror of the Great Plague. And just 1 year after that, he literally stands there and watches London burn to the ground in the Great Fire. For him, these aren't just bullet points in a history book. This is his daily life. And that's the whole thing right there, the candidness and detail. Pepys doesn't just say, oh, there was a plague today. No way. He describes seeing the red crosses painted on doors, the terrifying silence of the streets, and his own very real, very personal fear of getting sick. He makes history feel human. He makes it feel immediate. But the diary is so much more than just a record of big historical events. The real magic, the thing that makes you keep reading, is the man himself. Pepys gives us this incredibly intimate portrait of a complex, flawed, and honestly, a deeply relatable human being. This is what makes it a total masterpiece. Because it was written in code, it's completely unfiltered. He writes about everything: arguments with his wife, his jealousies at work, his deep love of music and going to the theater, and most famously, his own mistakes and moral failings. Nothing is off limits. And this contrast is just fascinating, isn't it? On one hand, you have the public Samuel Pepys, this high-ranking official managing the Navy during major wars. But then you open the diary and you get the private Pepys, a guy stressing about money, getting way too excited about a good play, and writing down all the ups and downs of his marriage. It's the whole person, warts and all. In the end, it's this combination that makes the diary so priceless. Historians don't just get the facts, they get the feeling, the human emotion, the everyday reality behind all those huge events. His total honesty about his own flaws is what makes him feel so real, so modern to us today. So why on earth are we still talking about a 350-year-old diary? Well, it's because its legacy is kind of twofold, and it's just incredibly powerful. First, for historians, it's an absolute treasure chest. There is simply no other document from that time that's anything like it. But second, it's a genuine literary masterpiece. Seriously, it's a great read. Pepys was just a natural storyteller with a super sharp eye for detail and a witty, engaging voice that just pulls you right in. And this is really why Pepys's diary lasts. It reminds us that even when you're in the middle of history-defining plagues and fires and revolutions, life just keeps going. People still worry about their jobs, they fall in love, they get jealous, they find joy in music. It perfectly captures the messy, complicated, and beautiful truth of what it means to be human.
And that kind of leaves us with a fascinating thought for our own time, doesn't it? All the things we write down, the private messages we send, the social media posts we think are gone in an instant. What story would all of that tell a historian in, say, the year 2300? What secret, unfiltered truth about our world are we recording every single day without even realizing it? Something to think